This is From Both Sides, a spontaneous, free-flowing conversation featuring a dynamic team of women, providing insights into both political and civic events affecting the lives of women throughout Pennsylvania. And now, here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of From Both Sides. I'm Michelle Saletto, your host. With our mission to educate and empower women in Pennsylvania, today's show features the growing phenomena called women's initiatives, in which businesses develop strategic career opportunities for women and improve business at the same time. Sounds like a win-win to me. Let's see. But first, I'd like to introduce my guest host today. Ann is the former chair of the Republican Committee of Lancaster County, a longtime Republican aficionado, well-respected, well-known in Lancaster County, Ann Womble. Ann, welcome.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Michelle. I want to thank you and Donna for asking me to co-host today.
Well, thanks for being here. We've got a great show. And for once, Ann, this may be something that, even though we're looking at this from two different angles, that we might want to agree today on.
I think so.
Agree to agree rather than agree to disagree.
It's a very exciting topic, and I think all women can rally around it.
Okay, great. Let's see. I'd like to introduce our guest today, Teresa Terri Currier, who is an award-winning partner at the Saul Ewing law firm. She is also the chair of the Women's Development Initiatives, and she's the author of an article called Take the Initiative, 25 Steps to Successfully Implement or Grow a Women's Initiative Program in Any Business. So Terri, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
That's great. Why don't we start out, Terri, by having you tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit how you were got involved in developing women's initiatives.
Sure. Well, I'm a partner at Saul Ewing, and I had joined Saul Ewing in 2009 at a time when its women's initiative was in its first few years. And we had a wonderful chairwoman, but she got promoted to a different role in the firm, which is what you want to happen when you take a leadership position, to go up higher. And I had only been involved in the women's initiative a few months. I was a new lateral, and she asked me to be the next chairperson. And women often will give you 19 reasons why they're not the right person for a promotion. So I did that. I told everyone why I wasn't the right person and I was too new to the firm. But it turned out to be exactly the right position for me, and it also enabled our women's initiative to springboard to the next level.
Okay. Can you start out, too, by telling us exactly what is a women's initiative?
A women's initiative is an affinity group in an organization for women, and it's keeping the women together and doing things together that both benefits them in their own careers and their own personal satisfaction, and it benefits the organization in a number of ways.
Why do women need something like this in a law firm or in a corporation or any other kind of organization?
Well, I don't think that it's something that they need. It isn't something that they're being brought from behind and they need to be fostered or they need special attention, but it's something that they really benefit from, particularly in male-dominated industries like law firms, because women learn how to behave like men. I'm a courtroom lawyer, I know how to go in there and be competitive, but by being with other women, we remember the things that are our innate abilities as women. So it's a win-win because we maximize all of our feminine energies as well as masculine.
So what would it look like if you were going into a new organization and developing a women's initiative? What would we see? What would women partake in? How does it look?
Well, if there's no initiative at all, the first thing that you do is you need to get buy-in from management and have management understand why it's important to set aside money and have an initiative. And then the very first year or the first 2 or 3 years, you do things only with the women, so that the women understand the community, they combine together, they build relationships, because relationships are really important to women before you start taking on a larger agenda. So at first it's about community and it's about support.
How did this whole movement begin? What's the history?
You know, in the around 2000, firms and organizations started having women's initiatives. Perhaps it was something that was to enable women to try to close the gender gap and advance more. But in the early stages, in other organizations, these initiatives were more soft, we like to say. They'd be spa days for women, or they'd go on shopping events, and sometimes, frankly, they were complaining sessions where women would complain about their organization or complain about men. And that never really got very far. It didn't get any traction. And that's why now we focus on making the women's initiatives be more pro-organization.
I think that's really common with a number of women's groups. I know that I was the president of the School Administrators Women's Caucus, which is a subgroup to promote more women into the superintendency. And I know in the beginning of our Women's Caucus, they were smaller, shorter opportunities for women to get together and network, and they were kind of fluff. They had a lot of fluff with them. Over the years, I'm talking, that was probably more than 20 years ago now, but over the years, it's grown into very strong professional development. But the networking has been very, very helpful, I know, to women in school administration. What do you think is the biggest advantage for women in a corporation or a law firm to be involved with a women's initiative, in terms of what can they gain, what can the women gain from it?
The biggest advantage still is women sharing their stories. So younger women who might be planning a family, for example, or might need to understand how to balance career and family, or even if it's not about family, just how to advance through an organization, to have the resources to hear the stories from other women. That it's community, but it also teaches you that there are flexible ways. It helps you learn what others have done before. So that's the biggest resource still. It's mentoring. And in fact, what I like is I like mentoring circles rather than the older women mentoring the younger women as if, that's the only direction it should go. A lot of women's initiatives employ mentoring circles where you have women of all ages together and you mentor one another, because the younger women can teach us about technology, for example, or social media, or whatever might be more within their wheelhouse. So the mentoring should go in all directions.
Are men involved in the women's initiative at all?
Well, at Saul Ewing they are, because once your women's initiative is established and you have community and you have good energy, then the thing to do is take it up to the next level. And you need to start planning events for your whole firm or your whole organization and involve the men, because the men want to be involved. They want to see what's going on. They want to be involved in bigger activities. So now we do some activities that are only for women. We still do that every year. But we do very large signature events for the whole firm, and the men love them too.
Businesses or firms are ultimately concerned about the bottom line.
Yes.
Tell us how a women's development initiative addresses the bottom line of a firm.
Well, the first thing that you do when you take your initiative from those formative days up to this next level, to answer your question, is you need to have a mission. And my women's initiative, the mission is maximizing women's contributions. And what that means is it can mean their contributions in the world, but it ultimately means their contributions to the firm. So you want to be focusing on the bottom line. You want the firm or the company to know that the money that it's giving you, you're using it in ways that are bettering the firm, that are increasing retention of women or diverse attorneys in our case, and that you're getting a return on investment, that you're doing things with clients that are going to bring in business. So we measure those things and we make it very specific that it's about business development.
So you work with, for example, your accounting department to actually have hard metrics to present to management to show the success of the initiative.
We do. We work with our marketing department because that's actually where that is housed. We measure what clients we've had touches with, who we've met, who's come to our events, how many new cases they've brought to us after that, and we follow through and gather metrics in that way. And then every year, myself and my vice chair, we report to our executive committee, which is our governing body of the firm, and we do a State of the Union address where we tell them about where we were last year, what our metrics are, what we've done, and where we're going. So we actually report like a business unit, and that's a great way to handle your initiative.
Mm-hmm.
So is that really like a one-to-one correspondence? Are you able to really track some of the things that you've done at the Women's Initiative directly to clients and growth in the business? or is that kind of more of a long-term effect?
Well, it's both, because we measure two things. We measure two kinds of metrics. We measure retention. Are we keeping our women? Are we attracting new women? Are we bringing new women out from the outside world and that are being hired because they like the Women's Initiative, or if that's one of the things they mention. So we measure that, but to the business development, we measure the touches and we measure how many times clients have returned to us, how many clients have come back to our Women's Initiative events. But you can't, it's not a straight line linear effect. Obviously there are many other forces acting on them in the firm. So it's more of a long-term effect. Are we inculcating that client into the firm? Are we making them happy? Are they happy with the Women's Development Initiative as one of our measures of diversity, for example?
And it seems like for many businesses, how you retain clients really ties into the relationship that you have with clients. So it would seem like then if you were getting a good response to some of these initiatives with your client base, then it's going to improve business in the long run.
Absolutely. And it's even more specific than that, because women have a very great ability to work on relationships. That's one of the things that are in our wheelhouse that we're better with. And a lot of our clients have women in-house counsel, and they want to work with women, or they want to see women on the teams. So if you have relationship building from both sides and it's enhanced by your Women's Initiative, that's got to lead to a better client relationship.
A moment ago you mentioned how women have to think about balancing family or outside concerns. Sometimes college-educated or professionally educated women decide to take a break from the workforce and stay at home with children, for example, or take care of family. And later on they're looking to come back in and utilize their skills again. But in the meantime, they've missed out on these wonderful things like women's development initiatives in the workplace. Can you tell us about how they might possibly be able to stay connected during those years and then come back in successfully?
Well, Anne, that's a great question, because that's one of the cutting-edge topics we talk about in our consortium of women's initiatives in our region. Lots of firms actually have, either in their Women's Initiative or in their career development initiatives, people in charge of helping with on-ramping and off-ramping, which is what the term is today. Off-ramping when women want to leave the profession for a while, and whether it's for family or caring for somebody who's ill or whatever the reason might be, and then on-ramping again when those responsibilities shift. So firms are actually already in that dialogue. So those women that you're talking about might be surprised to find that there's receptivity to the on-ramping again. But what they should do to better their position is they should be involved in some women's networking events that they can be in the community and in their industry, whether it's directed to one particular employer or not. You can always go to a monthly women's event, or a women's professional book discussion group is a big thing that's happening, so that you're in touch with other professional women who can help you when the time comes to on-ramp.
Okay, on that note, I think we're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
From Both Sides is a production of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and is made possible by the support of the Pennsylvania Center for Women in Politics at Chatham University, a nonpartisan center devoted to fostering women's public leadership through education, empowerment, and action. The first to focus on women's political involvement in Pennsylvania, the center integrates disciplinary knowledge, civic education, and capacity building, while examining the intersection of women and public policy. From Both Sides is also supported as a public service by Saul Ewing, LLP, a law firm with a 100-year tradition of serving the needs of business, government, education, healthcare, technology, and manufacturing in our region. And by the University Center for International Studies, the engine for extending the global reach of the University of Pittsburgh and its students.
Welcome back to From Both Sides. Today we're talking with Terri Currier from the Saul Ewing Law Firm about women's initiatives and how the growth of women's initiatives promote the growth of women's career opportunities and business. And joining me is my guest co-host, Ann Womble.
Thanks, Michelle.
Terri, can we get back to the original discussion and talk a little bit more about exactly what is a women's initiative so that the viewers can really understand and kind of wrap their arms around what are the components, what are the things you're going to see with a women's initiative in any organization.
Sure. Well, I'll talk about my women's initiative, but different people can do it differently. It's a group of women all together who meet at different times in the year. We have a steering committee of 14 members who make decisions for all of the women, and we have 80 women in our organization, just to understand the optics. We do a signature client event for a big activity in the year where women can meet with clients and have a chance to interact directly with their clients, and also male attorneys. We put together a large signature client event. We do a training session of some sort every year that will enhance attorneys' skills, and that's for women. Sometimes it's only for women, or it's for women and men. For example, in the past we've done training on the millennial generation and how it's going to change law firms and the workplace in our world in general. We've done that for the whole firm, and this year we're doing one on public speaking for lawyers. And even though it's for women and men, I met with a woman federal judge who said when women come into her courtroom, they don't speak loudly enough or with enough confidence, even if they're better prepared than the men on the other side of the table. Yeah. So we're working on enhancing some of those public speaking skills for young lawyers, but for all of us. So that's a training session. We have social activities that are really designed around feedback, mentoring, but also feedback. Getting feedback from our women about what support they need, what questions they have about the organization, so increasing the flow of communication. And then we have reporting up to management. So those are sort of the aspects that go on in our women's initiative, but I'd say in any women's initiative.
So it's building the skills of the women in your organization, not excluding the men in the organization, because it's open to everyone, but it really focuses on helping women build their skills and be more productive to the organization.
Yes. Sometimes we do events that are only for women because I believe, and studies have shown, that if women spend time just with each other, they gain confidence, they remember the skills that are innately theirs as opposed to the ones that are more male skills, more masculine energy. They work together with each other, but most of our training sessions and many of our events, we invite men too, because we do things that are for the good of the entire organization. And that's part of that bottom line. We're enhancing our women's skills and helping them to create a leadership path and future opportunities. But to do that, we're bettering the whole organization.
And it's especially prevalent in male-dominated professions.
It's definitely useful, and I'd say imperative in male-dominated organizations, because you want your women to stay and you want them to contribute what they bring innately that might not be present in the male-dominated organization.
Okay, great.
Terri, last year you wrote a wonderful article that was published in the Women's Law Journal in the summer of 2014,
yes,
where you identified 25 factors for success of a women's development initiative. And it has so many rich components to it, but one thing that really struck me when I read it is that the way that you describe the Women's Development Initiative, it has factors that relate to all aspects of the company, not just professional development for the women, but all the ways in which it makes the larger firm more successful.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the points that you made in that article?
Well, a women's initiative, once it's formed and it's strong and it's recognized by management, it can be a change agent for an organization. So it can take up issues that aren't innately women's issues, and it should. It should speak about the millennial generation, for example. That's a workplace issue. That's broader than women. That's broader than young attorneys. So it can take up issues like that and be a voice, and it can work with other aspects of an organization. For example, I recommend that women's initiatives work with the diversity initiative or any other affinity groups in a firm or a company, like the LGBT group or a Latino group or whatever, that you all work together. You can all have the same enhancement that you're looking for, but you can bring it through a different voice. So that's one of the things I recommend.
Well, one of the points that you make in that list really struck me in a wonderful way. You talk about the X factor that women should not be afraid to promote, meaning radiance or beauty. Talk about how you look at that topic and how it's a positive thing that women should be embracing.
Well, that's a great question, Anne. And you know, the word beauty is really loaded, especially in male-dominated organizations, because beauty sounds like you're using your femininity in some sort of untoward way. And that's why I like the word radiance more, and I like it for two reasons. First off, if you have something, if you have an energy, or you have a way that you can make yourself look more compelling to a judge or to a client or in a presentation, you'd want to do that. So I'm talking about using your beauty and your radiance in a professional way. But I'm a courtroom lawyer, and when I go into court, I'm thinking about all the ways I can connect with the judge. I do just bench trial work, so I'm thinking about how can I connect with the judge. So radiance not only means how do I look and what's the image I'm putting forward, but it's also, I mean it in a warmth way. And women project feelings generally in a different way than men do. So you want to connect with the judge. You want to connect from your passion, the energy in your words, the fact that people can tell that what you're saying that you mean. So I think that I tell women, use those kind of abilities. Use your radiance, wear things that you like, obviously with, you know, in a professional way. Feel good, and then project your passion in your words, because everyone remembers when someone stands up and speaks passionately. So radiance means your feeling, your energy, your intuition, all those things, bringing them to the workplace.
It's a real confidence builder.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Because when we feel good, we're better able to connect with others, and we're better able to persuade if that's what we're doing, or advocate.
Right.
Terri, can you share a real example of women changing a business environment or situation kind of based on some of the experiences they've had through the Women's Initiative?
Well, I can share one that one of my male partners told me about me. So I can't share it as an observer, but I was brought in to help with some Delaware litigation that was contested, and I'm a Delaware lawyer. And we had all men in the room, including other lawyers who were also working with our client. And our client was very unhappy about something that the adversary had done to us and what we were about to go to court and argue about. And the room was sort of full of anger and some stress. And my partner said the testosterone level in the room was really high. So I was going to meet all these clients that day. I had never met them before. And we were all going to go to court together, and I was the person who would be arguing in front of the judge. So I was in my my masculine energy, if you will, wearing my courtroom suit. I was in charge. But my partner told me that when I came into the conference room, into this energy and this anger and this stress, that everyone's energy just went down, and they became calmer, and they were able to listen to reason a little bit more. I was able to tell them the pros and the cons of what was going on. And even though my partner had told them many times, he remarked afterwards that bringing a woman into the team brought a calmness and a sense of reasonableness, perhaps, in an energy way. So that's the best example. It's I've seen it happen more when women are involved. I think that it's a different energy. It's any kind of diversity. When you bring people who are different together, I think you reach a better resolution or a commonality. And maybe the energy isn't as extreme as when it's in a very antagonistic situation.
Well, Michelle, you and I have talked about how we would both love to see more women involved in electoral politics in the worlds of public policy that we're familiar with. And, you know, this is just such a nice example of how women being involved in powerful situations can have such an effect of reasonableness and moving the ball forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and I think that it's important for women to realize that, because the story I just told you, I wouldn't have even known that if my partner hadn't shared with me what he observed. I think sometimes, especially in a male-dominated world like electoral politics or my world of law, you're busy thinking about things in the male-focused way. And if you realize that women's energy brings something else to the table or something else into the mix, it's good to know that, because that gives you a quiet confidence. You know you're bringing something else and that it's all working together. And I think that's one of the best things that women's initiatives can teach, is that we bring more. 1 + 1 = 4 when we're working together with men, when we're working together in a certain profession, but we're not forgetting our X factor. We're bringing in what women have as well as the skills that men have.
You know, about 20 years ago, when I was still married, my husband was kind of criticizing me for all of these women's groups that I was involved with, and said, well, Michelle, I don't know what you would do if I went off and started a men's group. And I said, well, you already have a men's group. And he said, I do. And I said, yes, it's called the world. So, you know, at that point, I just felt that there were so many male-dominated professions that the only way that women were ever going to get to that equalization point was to band together, work together, help each other. So to me, part of all of these women's groups is the ability to support women as women, which I think in the early days of women moving into executive management, that was lacking. But my question for you then, Terri, is do you think we're ever going to see a time where we don't need these women's groups?
Well, I think that ultimately with the millennial generation coming on, it's going to be less about gender. It's going to be about inclusion of all sorts of different people's viewpoints, and it's going to be a broader topic. It's not necessarily only going to be gender. But you talked about how it first was when women started attaining higher positions. The second generation of women's initiatives is this working together and women realizing and supporting each other. And now I think we're about to go into the third generation, which is remembering that we're not, we're stronger with the men. So in other words, now if the men are recognizing what we bring and we're recognizing what they bring, now I think it's men and women in organizations being stronger together.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Boy, the time has certainly flown today. I thank you for joining us for another edition of From Both Sides, and I hope that you'll remember and agree with us as we feel that despite our political differences, for women in Pennsylvania, there is much more that unites us than divides us. Thank you, and please tune in again to From Both Sides.